Hello and welcome to Cleave to Antiquity. My name is Ben, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Father Panayiotis. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Ben.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. This will be exciting. I've been a fan of Trisagion films since I first began inquiring into Orthodoxy, and I was just telling you back behind the scenes. It was those documentaries, those videos of the lives of the saints, and just detailing them in very high quality, well produced videos were invaluable to me during that time period because I remember going through spiritual warfare and things like that, and then just putting those on in the background, and it helps you get the right state of mind, and it also
Yep.
prepares you because the examples in the lives of the saints will kind of give you a heads up of what's to come, what you might experience, those types of things. So
If they
uh,
experience that, you will too, right?
absolutely. So I,
Yeah.
I really appreciate your work, Father.
Thank you very much. Thank God. I mean, it's a privilege for me to be able to do that. And I have a good team around me. So we are working hard to make these things inspiring for people because there is so much richness in the Orthodox faith that unless you go into the lives of the saints, especially, you won't find it theological books and things like that. It's not apparent, and a lot of people are interested in theology, but the application of the theology is really what is the amazing part of all of this. The history of the church, of course, the history of Christianity, and the history of Orthodoxy and its survival through the centuries in so many adverse conditions as they survived the Turks, the communists, and everybody else, and Islam. But the lives of the saints is what gives you the understanding of how they applied the gospel so that they can survive, so that they can excel actually and receive the gifts of God. Because the lives of the saints are the gospel in practice, and the saints are the embodiment of the gospels, okay? Because the embodiment of the gospel and the teaching of Christ, because they are the ones who put it into application. And we can talk about this a lot with more specifics as we go on. So,
Absolutely.
glory
So
to God that we're able to do that. And as I said, it's a great privilege that we have all of these and we're able to talk about it.
oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's invaluable. It's very very necessary for anybody who a lot of my audience is either they're Protestants inquiring into Orthodoxy, or maybe they're former Protestants that are now Orthodox catechumens. Um, so for those of you that are watching, if you haven't checked out Trisagion films, check out the channel and
Yep.
watch some of those documentaries on the lives of the saints. They help to prepare you for things that you will experience in the life of the church, and they help to really have you avoid have you avoid some of the pitfalls that might come up as well. So I really appreciate everything you're doing, Father. Why don't you just kind of introduce yourself a little bit, talk about what you do, so that way anybody that's not familiar can get to know you a little bit.
Uh, well, I'm Father Panayiotis. I'm actually in Marietta, Georgia. I have a parish, the Holy Transfiguration Parish, Greek Orthodox Church in Marietta, under the metropolis of Atlanta. I'm an active priest, and I do uh, I primarily work with people on a daily basis. And recently, I have many converts who are coming to us, a lot of young people and families. Um, the Trisagion films came out of a, a desire three different things. One is the desire from my part to put on video the answers to a lot of questions that catechumens asked me over the years.
Mhm.
I've been doing this for almost 40 years. So uh, I've received many hundreds of people over the years. And so I the questions that you get, especially for Protestants, are particularly similar, very similar. So my first thing that I wanted to do was to videotape myself answering questions, and I did that, and that's found on the channel Trisagion Films. It's found in the Ask Father Panayiotis playlist. So questions about why salvation by faith alone, or why do we baptize infants, or why do we do this and the other thing and the other thing. So there are a lot of short films like that we created with my son being the videographer and the editor. And then I went on to do bigger things like the atonement theories, and then the Orthodox perspective of salvation, which came out of the presentations I was doing in the parish, and presentations that I was doing for catechumens, and then we put together a team where we started writing scripts of the lives of the saints, and that was primarily my son's idea, who is really the one who put together the whole channel, and he's very proud of that. But we put together scripts, and then we developed them into films. If you go to the very early ones, you will actually find short films from our trips to the Holy Land and trips here and there, and interviews with certain people. But as time went on, we developed the scripts for the lives of the saints, and then we developed scripts for explanations of icons, the icon of the Annunciation, the icon of Christmas, the icon of whatever, which are very, very well done, and explain the theology of the icon and whatever is on it, and why this and why that, and why the colors and why this other thing. Anyway, so from there we put together scripts for the lives of the saints, and then we got some artists to do some very primitive art in the beginning, beautiful but yet primitive, and then we got someone that would do real iconography art, which made them very beautiful. The scripts were always very good. The art became better and better over time, and then we discovered ways to do a little animation here and there, and people who helped us. All of this was primarily done on the volunteer basis. We got hardly any income in the beginning, because we paid nobody, because there wasn't any money to pay, until we organized it, and at some point we made it into a 501c3 charitable organization or non-profit organization, so that we can earn a little money and pay some of these artists and the people who are helping us. And that's where we are now, and we've come a long way, and we have a lot of videos, almost 200 videos, I believe, right now. And every so often we develop another one. And we also have a series called The Chronicles of the Desert, which are shorter lives of desert fathers, which gives the message of what makes them holy and what makes them stand out as saints, and the ways that they themselves lived, and the way that they taught, and the way that they developed themselves spiritually, which is really a lot of help for anyone who wants to grow spiritually in the church, through the help of those who have done it before. And then we have the major films, which are 40 minutes long, or we have an hour-long films about the lives of many of the bigger saints, including the latest Father Paisios, Father Porphyrios, Father Gabriel of Georgia, who is amazing saint. We actually traveled to Georgia and filmed things there
Wow.
and created several. We created the life of Saint Gabriel, but we also created films on the house where he lived, his hermitage, where the communists destroyed it and he rebuilt it a couple of times. His grave, the places where he lived and the church where he served, and things like that, which are very unique and very beautiful. Um, and then we have more and more, and we're putting out all kinds of things as as we're able to get the scripts out and the information that we need. Uh, Alicia is on and she's greeting me. Hello, Alicia.
Got some of your parishioners in the chat, so
Yeah.
that's awesome. I figure what may be good for the audience is let me play a quick short from the channel just so they can get a little familiar with your work and see what you're talking about as far as the artwork goes and the lives of the saints and the stories here. So this will be I'll play this one right here.
Can't you now realize how true all of this is, O philosopher? You have been saying that it is impossible for three to be one. Yet even in the material things we observe in the world, this can be so. And reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a large piece of terracotta roof tile, which he had brought with him from Cyprus, lifted it up, and squeezing it in the palm of his hand, he proclaimed, "In the name of the Father," and flames of fire went up from the tile, and of the Son, and water ran down from his palm to the ground, and of the Holy Spirit, and opening his palm, he showed the clay remaining from the tile. Everyone stood in amazement. The rationalistic philosopher was left speechless. He, along with Arius and their followers, were shamed.
Yeah, very beautiful iconography. The artwork is well done. It's well produced. But also it's sharing the lives of the saints, which I think is super important. A lot of let me get your take on this. So one thing that I've noticed, especially with newer Orthodox converts, they're very theology focused, very intellectual focused. I think the piece that's missing for a lot of us is the spiritual life and the life of the saints.
And the mystical aspect of Christianity, which is not present either in the definitely not in the Protestant world, and maybe in the Roman Catholics at the minimal level, but the mystical aspect, this is what we're talking about, the presence of God in our everyday lives, which he transforms everything if we allow him to do it. That's very important. And newcomers to the church need to know that, need to understand that, and need to claim that as their own and make it part of their lives as well.
Yeah, I feel a lot of these stories really help to prepare people for when they do maybe get deeper into their spiritual understanding, deeper into their prayer life, so on and so forth. For instance, I mean, just to understand some of the temptations that you'll face as well. I remember I was watching one of the videos on there. I believe it was on Saint Simeon the Stylite, and it was talking about the angel appearing to him, and he was like, "Come with me, I'm going to take you up to heaven, just like Elijah." And he's like, "Okay, well, let me make the sign of the cross." So he makes the sign of the cross, and it's a demon basically. It goes away, and his foot is over the edge of the pillar. He's about to fall off. So, can warn you about the dangers of maybe prelest or pride or spiritual delusion as well, which really the safeguards for that are only found within the Orthodox Church. So something extremely important to understand. So as far as these stories of the lives of the saints, what would you recommend on your channel specifically, somebody who is brand new to the Orthodox faith, maybe checking out first, and what stories do you think will be the most beneficial for them?
Well, I don't want to put down theology. I'm a theologian. I spent many years studying theology. I wrote books. I wrote all kinds of things, and I wrote papers, theological papers. So I'm in favor of knowing theology, but nobody can reach God with their brains. Okay, nobody can reach God with their logical arguments. You cannot prove anything with logical arguments, and nobody can know God with their intellect and the rational kind of process, which is really how the West has functioned since the time of Thomas Aquinas, who was the one who brought Aristotelian logic into theology, which the East never did, because they had all of that on the side and they were using techniques and they were using language, but they were not really taking the actual philosophical arguments or the method of the philosophical arguments. They were not using them to show God, to prove God. They knew that God cannot be approached in that way. Unfortunately, the West inherited Thomas Aquinas, and even though the Protestants rejected Roman Catholicism, they didn't reject all the theology of Roman Catholicism and the methods of developing theology and doing theology, which are all based on Thomas Aquinas as rationalistic arguments and things like that. To this day, you can hear them arguing in a rational way about everything from the creation to that God exists and that this and the other thing. They're all very rationalistic and very legalistic, which comes way back from St. Augustine. In the East, the church was enriched by the experience of the desert. It was enriched by the experience of these saints who lived in the desert. All they did is prayer. They connected with God, and God gave them the ability to know Him through their hearts. So the advice is, learn theology, know the basic things, but don't continue staying with that alone. Mm-hmm. You need to know God, and you cannot know Him with your head. You need to know Him with your heart. Okay, and that happens in worship. So I always point out to people who are coming to the church to find out who we are and all these things, that the center of our lives is worship. Not only the divine liturgy, but the other services as well. And we need to connect to the whole annual calendar, all the feasts, and begin to connect with God seasonally. This is a Christmas period. We are immersed in Christmas. There is the hymns of Christmas. There is a understanding of Christ, of Jesus as the Christ, and the one who came to earth to take our human form and perfect it and bring it out and reconnect it with God, because we broke our relationship with God. And even the cross is not to be seen as a punishment for Him, but is a gift to us, in the sense of that He allows Himself to be crucified so that He can give us another gift, which is the final resurrection. And through His resurrection, we are raised up as well. When He ascends to heaven, He lifts our humanity, our entire humanity that He took upon Himself, heals it, makes it perfect, makes it immortal, and brings it and seats it and glorifies it next to the Father. And now we can participate in Him directly, both through prayer, spiritually, as well as physically through the body and blood of Christ, the resurrected and glorified body and blood of Christ, which is now seated next to the Father, and we can be glorified with Him in that sense. So that is really what's all of this about. The saints are glorified through Christ, through Christ's death and resurrection and His ascension to heaven. And they receive all of that because they're immersed in prayer, connecting with Him, connecting with the resurrected Christ, not the dead Christ, not the tortured Christ, but the resurrected Christ. And that's what gives them the gifts, which are spread out into the world, and they're not for themselves alone. The gifts of the saints are for everybody. And those gifts are received only through that complete surrender to God's will, through prayer, through the worship that we do in all of the services, including Vespers, Orthodox in the beginning, in the morning, and the Divine Liturgy. And I can talk a lot about this if you want me to. So let's move on, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's extremely important. I want to touch on one video that was posted on the channel that I thought was very helpful for me myself. The St. Herman of Alaska documentary that was put out. There were a lot of nuggets of wisdom within that documentary itself. I remember the one that I think about the most, though, was the story of St. Herman when he was in his cell, and he has, I forget who it was, if it was somebody was coming to his door, the door of his cell.
The young man that he adopted.
Okay, yes. And he didn't say the prayer, and he didn't let him in. And then he comes back and he says the prayer. And he says, when I first came here, the demons were like basically like everywhere. They were messing with me pretty bad. So I don't let anybody in unless they say a prayer. I feel like there's a lot of different ways that even that one lesson, that one instance, you could view that and take things away for your own spiritual life. For me, it's more a confirmation of the reality of not only the reality, but the tangibility, it seems, of spiritual warfare. Because one thing that I've noticed since becoming Orthodox, it's a different, or journeying into the Orthodox Church, it is a different ball game than being involved in, say, Protestantism, so on and so forth. You will experience things that you hadn't experienced before, and people don't understand that from the outside. So
it's experience things that you didn't know existed, and they went unnoticed before. It's not that they were not there before, but you were not noticing them and you didn't know about them, so they were not important. But now your world has expanded and you're more aware and you're more sensitive to those spiritual things.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Another piece that I liked about that is a lot of questions that I get in this channel when I do these Q&A streams, which we'll shift over into the Q&A in just a little bit here, guys. So if you want to keep sending in your questions, I'll star them as they come in, and we'll get to them in a moment. But one question that's asked a lot is, what's the history of Orthodox evangelism? And I could point to St. Herman of Alaska as an excellent example of that. So just knowing these stories in the lives of the saints is infinitely useful. So I would highly recommend everybody check out the channel and get to know some of these stories, and then pick up books on them too.
Yeah, the books as well.
Sorry, go ahead.
The answer about evangelism is that the church was very evangelistic from the very beginning, okay? And the proclamation of the gospel was always very at the top of the priority of the church for many centuries. And entire peoples were converted. I mean, the classic story is the story of the conversion of the Slavs, where these two monks went to the Slavic world, and they even they didn't have a language of themselves. They spoke a language, but they didn't have a written language. So they created an alphabet based on the Greek alphabet and based on the sounds of their words. And they created a language for themselves, for the Slavs. And they translated all of the services and many of the biblical texts into that language, which is now called Slavonic. And through that they basically converted thousands of people, entire people, and then after that we have the conversion of the Rus, the Russian people. But in the conversion of the Russian people, you see the most central aspect of why they converted. When the representatives of the king, Vladimir, arrived, they went around looking for a faith for their people as the king wanted. They went to the Roman Catholics, they went to the Muslims, and then they ended up in Constantinople. And the moment they walked into the church of Hagia Sophia, probably in the middle of a liturgy, with a big choir singing and the very what shall I call it, sacred feeling of the presence of God, they knew that was the place, and they went back and they said, we didn't know whether we're on earth or in heaven.
Yes.
And Vladimir adopted the Orthodox faith as the faith of his people. And then the church, the Patriarchate of Constantinople, sent missionaries, people to teach them and to guide them and to. So that's how the church always was. It was converting entire peoples, because that's the way the word functioned in those days. The problem for the Orthodox Church came as a kind of an end to evangelization with the advancement of the Islamic forces, and especially after the entire Roman Empire of the East, which was also called the Byzantine Empire, was basically conquered and destroyed, and all of that civilization was destroyed. And the Christians of the East became slaves to the Muslims, the lower than human beings, basically treated for centuries like that, although there were moments that were not as bad, but they were not allowed to convert anybody, because the moment any Muslim converted, both the person who helped him convert as well as the person who converted would be killed. So for centuries they lived, and in some places they still live, under the Muslims, and they are unable to do any kind of evangelization of those around them, because they're going to die. And if you die, you don't do any more evangelization. Anyway, right. So God arranged it in such a way. And I see God's mercy and his providence in everything that happens on earth. And I believe that there is nothing that he cannot do it in a different way, but he chooses the way that he wants. So as the empire fell, the Grecian Roman Empire of the East fell, we have a movement of the peoples from the East coming into the West, and that's the first time they really know each other better. And then as the Greeks, Greek-speaking Christians of the East, under the Muslims, they rebel in the 1820s. Then you get the establishment of the Greek nation, but that really does not remain intact. Well, Christianity doesn't really go very far with that, but the fall of the Muslim Empire, the Ottoman Empire, brings us to the other level where the Christians become freer in the Balkans. And from them, the First World War is what creates the flow of Eastern Christians into the West at bigger numbers. Mm-hmm. So we have the expulsion of the Christians, in the Greek-speaking Christians primarily, in 1922 to 1925 from Asia Minor, which is now called Turkey, by the millions. And then the exchange of populations in 1925, where they sent all the Muslims to Turkey and they got all the Christians into Greece. And after that, you see hundreds of thousands of Orthodox Christians moving into the West, especially the United States. And the Pontians who came even earlier. And then you have the Second World War, and you have more flow from the East, from the Orthodox lands, especially the Greek-speaking ones. And then finally, you have the fall of communism, and you get another flow of the Eastern European countries that begin the flow of the Romanians and Bulgarians and the Russians and all these other, and the Ukrainians, and you get all of these waves of Orthodox Christians coming into the United States, into Australia, into Canada, and of course into Europe, with the result that now we're here, but we didn't come as evangelists. We didn't come to convert the Americans and the Europeans or the Australians or the Canadians. We came as immigrants. So we established our communities, and it took us almost a century to actually look out and say, hey, maybe we'll give this faith to you as well. And we're not even doing it, they're coming to us. So I see God's providence in all of this, as he replanted us from the old world and the old countries to the new countries, where we now have become a beacon of the Orthodox faith, and people come to us because they recognize that what we represent is really the faith that goes back to the apostles, and the worship and the way of worshiping God that goes all the way back to the early church. And people are amazed. I mean, I have people who come to me and they tell me, why didn't I know about this before? Well, we were hiding.
We were hiding.
We were surviving in a new world that we didn't understand, and hiding in a way, and wanted to keep our own together. So now is the time when we open the doors and we say, come, we're ready to receive you. We're not scared of you. As non-Orthodox, we are really embrace you, and we love you, and we want you to get what we have. We brought this amazing wealth, spiritual wealth, from the world we came from, and we're ready to give it to you as well and share it with you, because it doesn't only belong to us, it belongs to the whole world. And God wants you to have it as well. And that's how you guys are being received in the church, and you're enjoying what we have. And the Russians did something similar, coming through Alaska first, and then, of course, in the modern world, after the fall of communism, coming from that direction as well.
We have so many inquirers, catechumens, and converts that the cradle Orthodox have to show up on time now to get a parking spot.
And a seat in the church.
Yes.
Thank you, Alicia.
Absolutely. Yep. I think Metropolitan Saba said it very well in his very recent speech. He said we are coming out of the age of the immigrant church and into the age of evangelism. And
that's it. Yeah.
We see this in parishes across the United States. It is just growing and growing and growing and growing. We see it. We see it in my own parish. Sometimes it's standing room only. We get people out in the narthex, standing out there. We'll have to go to. We've had to partner with a building or a business down the street to use some of their parking lots as overflow parking. So it is a real blessing, and I love it every time I see a new person step into the church. So if you're watching this, one thing that you can do would be greet all of these new people, so they do not feel like they are alone. Greet them, welcome them in, and that's one way to be the hands and feet of Christ.
But there is a necessity from our part to do a lot more than just greet them.
Yes.
Those who really want to become Orthodox, I think they need to be helped to understand a new way of thinking, a new way of doing things, a complete immersion in worship that they never had before. And unless we as Orthodox do that and help the people and guide them, there are so many different things, or the different ways of doing things that they need to learn and know from us who are there, who've been there, who were born in it, or who've been there for many years. And so I think that is something we owe the people who come in, so that they won't find themselves wondering and not understanding what any of this is and why we're doing it. So what I do is I usually ask people to read certain books, and then I spend a lot of time with them. And that's after acknowledging them at the service and inviting them into, yeah. And the people, the parishioners, need to do a lot of that as well, so that they can help the new people coming in. And we're doing it in my parish. We're doing it. We're trying to do it as best as possible, and I hope everybody else is doing it as well.
Absolutely. And in the spirit of helping the new converts and inquirers, let's shift over into our Q&A section of the live stream and
All
answer
right.
some questions for them.
Let's go for it.
So we had some sent in already, but if you're just now joining us, let me explain kind of how it works. You send your questions in with a Q in front, and I will star them. I'll get to them in the order in which they're received. If you want to skip in line and support the show, you can send in a super chat. I'll grab that, and I'll also prioritize those that are from inquirers. So let me know exactly where you're at. If you're an inquirer, put that in your question so I can prioritize those, because we want to make sure that you're getting your questions answered. All right, so let me go ahead and I'll start pulling up the comments here. Bisarak, he says, I don't know how to pronounce that name. Father Stravem Ritter is my priest?
Stephen Ritter, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Stephen Ritter, yeah. He's a priest that I cooperate with, and we did some videos on, for example, on is it possible that the Orthodox could be united with the Roman Catholics? Have you ever asked that question? Well, we answered the question in a very systematic way, and you may want to go watch that video because it's very, very wonderful. And we did others as well. You'll find them on the channel.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Gavin asks a question. He says, Father, can we get a full video on St. Lazarus? I have looked to find a full video on the tomb in Bethany, 30 years in Cyprus, and evidence found last century confirming the Orthodox tradition over the last 2,000 years of his relics.
We did a video on the place, but not on his life, I think. In Cyprus, there is the tomb of St. Lazarus. In Bethany, the tomb of St. Lazarus, the original tomb, is now a mosque, and is part of a complex of a mosque. It's been a mosque for many centuries. So there isn't much you can get there. There is only a hole in the wall somewhere. In Cyprus, though, there is a beautiful church that was built about 1,000 years ago, maybe a little longer than 1,100 years ago. The tomb of St. Lazarus is right under the sanctuary, under the holy table. And you can actually go down into the cave, into the place there, and you can actually venerate the tomb of St. Lazarus. And we have some of his relics in that church in Cyprus. Some of his relics were taken to Constantinople, and I don't know that they survived after the Turks took over. Maybe there are pieces of his relics somewhere, but in Cyprus we have a significant amount of his relics. So if you want to go there, that's a good place. Now, we're going to do a full video on St. Lazarus someday, because he's one of those saints that I love a lot. Time. We need time.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sure those videos take a lot of production. It takes a long time.
Sometimes they take months. Not sometimes, all the times they take months. For example, the video on St. Herman of Alaska took us from sometime in the summer, maybe June, all the way to like February. So it takes a long time. We do a very serious work in putting together the text and the script and making it into a video quality script. And then the illustrations take a long time. So we are aware, and it costs a lot of money. That's why we need support. We need always to have some support from people, because now we cannot function only with volunteers. We need to get the people who have the quality of work so that we can make the videos much better. So any help we can get, we appreciate it.
Absolutely. So anybody watching this show, make sure to go support them at the. You provide me the information after this, and I'll put it in the description as well if somebody wants
Yeah.
to support Trisagion Films. Absolutely. All right, let's see. Father, is it possible to take as much time as possible during the inquiry phase and attending liturgy before becoming a catechumen? Can it take years? See, sounds like he wants to stretch it out as long as possible.
Usually people want to become Orthodox quickly, and we keep them waiting for months. So usually I don't receive anybody until they complete about 9 months to a year. And the reason is so that they can really integrate into the parish and to understand what we're doing and to read some books and watch the videos. I give them all the videos of the Trisagion films to watch. But why would anybody want to extend it for years? I don't know. I got a family that they were going between their church and whatever church they were in at the time, and the Orthodox Church for about 5 years. And I finally told them, I said, look, you can't confuse your people, your children, because you're taking them to that church and to this church, and you're confusing them. So you need to give them a home, a spiritual home, so that they can grow up in a good environment. And finally, they agreed, and they were. And I told myself, either you go there or you go here. Don't go to both places. It's not good for your children, especially. And they finally stayed with us, and they were received. But most people do not want to wait. In fact, they want to become Orthodox right away. And I said, no, slow down. Your time will come. And when I think you're ready and you think you're ready, then we'll do it.
Yeah, it is. It is painstaking to wait. I feel because you just want to participate in the mysteries. You want to receive Christ, but I think it is necessary for your humility, necessary for your salvation, to have that period.
And
catechism.
Americans are used to jumping from one church to another,
Mhm.
and that I do not want anyone to come in here and think that they're going to do that. Either you embrace it or you don't do this. I want you to make sure that you want to be part of this. Otherwise, I don't want you to be received and then leave 6 months later or a year later because you decided not to be here. Either this is your place that you're going to stay, or don't be received until you're ready.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. Father, God bless. I need to ask if Gregorian chant is a valid way of chanting.
Not in the Orthodox Church. We have our own way of chanting, which is the Russians have their own, which they developed. Unfortunately, I say, they moved from the Byzantine chant to whatever they use in the years of the Tsars, especially I think it was Catherine the Great. These Tsars were all European, of European extraction, and they brought European ways into the church in Russia, and they moved away from the early chant of the church, which Romanians still have, Bulgarians still have it, the Serbians still have it, and the Greek speaking, of course, and the Arab speakers have it. Beautiful. The Arabs are probably one of the best executors of executioners, rather, whatever you want to call them, of the Byzantine chant, which is really, if you know how to do this and you do it in choirs, it is the most moving chant. So Gregorian chant is Western, and we don't use it in the Orthodox Church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was talking about this with somebody not that long ago, that preserving the liturgical tradition is vital to preserving the traditions themselves and the teachings of the church. You notice with the liturgical reforms of Vatican II within the Roman Catholic Church, things changed drastically as far as their theology goes as well. The same thing happened with the Gregorian reforms. So we really have to be extremely careful with that kind of thing.
Change is a drastic change in this way is not good for the church, especially when it happens within a generation. I think that if there is something that God wants us to change, He will show us how to do it, and He will develop it in a way that it will not affect the faith of people, and it will not affect their piety, and it will not affect their uh, ability to reach out to Him. And so we need to be careful not to bring these kinds of changes rapidly and destroy whatever has been there before.
Absolutely. Yep. Wise counsel.
Yeah.
Question. 6 months into my Orthodox journey, seeking full immersion and conversion, Father, what is your best advice for preparation for baptism?
Well, as I said before, the best thing to do is to learn some basic things. That's why I usually recommend certain books, and I recommend books of the lives of the saints as well. So there is some knowledge about what we're doing, why we're doing it, what everything means. All of that is good. Some basic theological ideas. If you're more theologically inclined, then there is more to be given to you. But primarily, the best preparation is worship. Immerse yourself in the worship of the church, in the feast days of the church throughout the year. And if you have a year of preparation, you will experience the entire cycle of the year. And then Holy Week is an amazing time to immerse yourself in, so that you can really get, in a mystical way, in a deeper way of the art, you can get what exactly happened and know it through your heart instead of intellectually. You know the story, but you don't know with your heart what happened. So, and then, of course, the guidance of the priest who is receiving you is very important, because he's the one who knows you. And that is what my advice would be. So if you're 6 months already, um, you probably understand what I'm saying, but give yourself enough time and ask your priest when he thinks that you're ready, and he will guide you. And I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be received within 9 months or a year.
Hello asks, how does one know if they are worthy in participating in the Eucharist? And then also, follow-up question from them, if I feel unworthy of partaking in the Eucharist, am I justified in not participating at that time?
Now, what is worthy? What does worthy mean? I'm not sure what you mean, but I would say that if you committed a sin that's serious, for example, I don't know, you did something, and especially if you have a big conflict with someone and you have feelings in your heart against them or things like that, you need to go to confession before you participate in the Holy Eucharist. Uh, but the Holy Eucharist is not for the worthy only. Who is worthy? Nobody is worthy. None of us is worthy. When the priest gives you Holy Communion, he says, the servant of God, your name, receives the holy body and blood of Christ for the forgiveness of sins and life everlasting. It doesn't say, you're wonderful, you're worthy today, so come and receive, and then gives you the the body and blood of Christ. He gives it so that our sins will be washed away and we will join ourselves and prepare for the kingdom of God. So we need to be responsible, and if there is an impediment for Holy Communion, a sin that needs to be confessed, we need to make sure that in a reconciliation with somebody we love or we don't love, for that matter, we need to do that and then come to Holy Communion. Otherwise, Holy Communion is not for the worthy, it's for all of us who are not worthy, who want the forgiveness of our sins and life everlasting.
Absolutely. All right, let's see here. The Truth in Him asks, for Ben and for Father P, on behalf of a dear Protestant friend, why pray to the saints and Mary if they are dead? Question mark. Any Bible verses for support? Well, they're not dead.
That's the whole point. The answer is they're not dead.
Yes.
In fact, we believe that the saints are in the kingdom of God already. They are at the throne of God. All right. And they intercede for us. You can see that in the book of Revelation. There may be other places I don't remember off the top of my head right now, but in the book of Revelation, they are at the throne of God interceding. The martyrs, in particular of the faith, they're at the throne of God interceding for those who are still alive. So people like the Theotokos, the mother of Christ, who is the greatest of all the saints, she's already there because she loved him so much. She gave birth to him. She raised him up. She taught him how to speak, how to walk. She was there for his miracles. And even though he didn't want to do a miracle at Cana of Galilee at the wedding, he obeyed her and he did his miracle, changing water into wine. Amazing, right? A lot of people they're scandalized when they hear that he actually made wine. They say, no, we're not supposed to drink wine. I'm just kidding.
Just Welch's grape juice. No.
Yeah. But look at this miracle where he's obeying his mother and she's interceding for the wedding, for the people so they won't be embarrassed, the family that was there. And she was probably related to them or had some connection with them. And he saves the wedding by having him create wine out of water. So if she was able to do that for wine, for a wedding, can you imagine what else she's able to do and what he will answer to if she asks him? So we honor her as the greatest of saints because she's so close to him, and we will never be able to be as close to him as she is. So if you think that somebody is really good, a good Christian, if your pastor is a good Christian or whatever, then you're wrong because there is a greater one always, and that is the Theotokos.
Yeah. Another point to bring up here, one thing that was convincing for me. Well, I mean, read the book of James. The prayers of the righteous are powerful and effective. Who is more righteous among the saints than the Theotokos, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That if you're talking to your Protestant friend and you want to, talk to them about this subject, those two verses in conjunction would be good. Also, just to talk to them about the books in the Deuterocanon as well, because we have prayers to angels. We have prayers for the dead, which is a different subject, but can start to tiptoe them in the direction of this. But also outside of the scripture, we have archaeological evidence, inscriptions on the tombs of early Christians within the first century that have prayers to the saints. Craig Truglia has done a couple of very good videos on that. So if you want to check that out, go check out Craig Truglia's channel. Let's see. Biserac sends $5. He's telling a joke here. He says, I propose a trade with the Russians. We'll go back to old calendar if they go back to Byzantine chant. That's funny. Paris, Father Bless, I would like to know your opinion on the so-called unity of Christianity. I think he's talking about the unity talks that were had recently in Turkey.
Yeah. Well, I think that these kind of meetings are not for unifying and uniting. It's for showing that we're friends with each other, because the Patriarch made a couple of comments in his own speech, Patriarch Bartholomew, where he said that there is a great problem with our relationship with the Roman Catholics, and that is the filioque and the infallibility claims of the Roman Catholic Church. And the infallibility claim was made into a dogma by the First Vatican Council, and anyone who will not follow it is anathematized by that Vatican Council. Therefore, nobody in the Roman Catholic Church will ever dare to change that unless maybe another Vatican Council would do it. I don't know. So there is no possibility for us to be united to the Roman Catholics. I don't see any. And there are many other reasons, and you can go and watch our video that we have on Trisagion Films. But to be friends with the other Christians is not a bad thing. I would love to be friends with everybody, because especially if they're honest and if they believe in the Trinity, and even if they have other things that there are errors, I would love to be friends, because I believe that is the way to win them into the Orthodox Church. When they realize that when they get to know us and they realize that we are preserving the faith better than they did, they will want to know more, and eventually we may win them over. I don't think the Vatican is ever going to come only by a miracle, by the grace of God, and I should never say never. But I don't think that the way they behaved over the centuries toward us gives me any hope that they will actually change anything from the things that we have asked over the centuries. And they have changed themselves so tremendously toward the worst, but they refuse to change anything that we ask them to do. I mean, one of the things that I have watched over the years, is that they're running out of priests because of all the scandals and of all the problems that they have with priests, because the priests are not married, and because the ranks of the priests were filled with sick people who didn't belong there, and they were exploiting the position of the priest of the Roman Catholic Church. And now they're running out of priests. So instead of saying, oh, we made a mistake over the centuries, we need to allow our priests to get married and begin to have married priests, instead of doing that, you know what they're doing? They are introducing married deacons who take over the different responsibilities of the priests. They're doing weddings, they're doing the sacraments, which naturally the deacons should not be doing sacraments by themselves. So they're doing all of the weddings, all of the baptisms, all of the funerals, all of the blessings of the waters, all of the things that the priest naturally does. They're giving it to the married deacons.
Yes.
Until now, the married deacons were not allowed to do any of that. So they have a big change.
Yes.
Allowing the deacons, changing the way they're functioning, okay? Instead of allowing the priest to be married, which was an original thing in the church, and we still have it, and we have been telling them to do that over the centuries, and they're not willing to do it. So
and they're giving the responsibilities of the deacons to lay people as well, with the extraordinary ministers that are women handing out the Eucharist.
Even that. Eucharistic ministers, I call them. I don't know what, but the sacraments are done by married deacons. So why not have married priests if you have married deacons? And then they accept the married priests if they come from the uniate groups. The uniate groups are groups that they were created by the Roman Catholics to convert the Orthodox. So they allowed them to be married priests in the parishes, and the only thing they needed to do, and do everything like we do, and be married, and the only thing they would be required to do is to commemorate the Pope as their bishop. Okay, so those uniates, they're allowed to be married as long as they commemorate the Pope, but their own, traditional, say, priests within the Roman Catholic Church are not allowed to get married.
Correct.
And they remove a big number of candidates to the priesthood that will be good priests, more stable, more secure, in the sense that they will have a family and they will be able to function better. They don't allow them to be priests, but they allow married deacons to do the work of the priests. So go figure.
Question: besides the Theotokos, who is Father's most beloved female saint? Here, as you answer this, I'm going to step away for just a second. I'll be right back.
Well, I don't have many preferences for saints, for women saints or men saints. I love them all equally, but my wife is Catherine, so I am very familiar with St. Catherine, and I love St. Catherine. I like St. Barbara because my sister is Barbara. And recently I discovered St. Anicia, whose memory is celebrated today, right? An early martyr saint that we developed. We created a video about her, and I love her a lot because how because of the way she gave her life for Christ, and she gave her life as well to the indigent, and she took care of the poor from the wealth that her parents left her. So go see the video, watch the video of Saint Anicia, and you will realize how wonderful she is, and you will like her as well. The Theotokos, of course, I'm named after her. So Panayiotis is my name, which is from Panagia, which means the old holy lady. So I celebrate her in my life, and I think that she is really one of the most amazing of the saints, the most amazing of the saints, if you really want to go truly to who she really is and her relationship with Christ. Nobody on earth will ever be able to have a closer relationship with Christ more than the Theotokos. Yes, Ben.
Yep, I'm back. Woohoo! All right. Cool dude asks a question. Is Alfred the Great considered a saint? I believe he is canonized in at least Rocor. He sounds unsure.
I don't know who he is. I don't know who he is at all,
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that might be a good question for Google. Cool dude. Question: what is the function of waving a piece of cloth over the Eucharist during the recitation of the Creed? Thank you for your inspiring work, Father. It really helps me in my journey.
Yeah. The cloth is it's called air, which means air. It's the cloth with which we cover the gifts, and the meaning of that, the final meaning after the centuries of doing this, is the meaning of the Holy Spirit coming over the gifts to make them into the body and blood of Christ. And that's all really that you need to know about it. It's not a big deal. Yeah.
Question: there are no English-speaking Orthodox churches within a plane flight of where I live in New Zealand. What would be your recommendation in this instance? Thanks. Keep up the good work, Cleve.
Well, I would say you need to find an online service from some church that's in English. There are a lot of the American churches that are in English, and maybe connect to that, and then spend some time on your own praying again and surrendering your life to God. And I think God will bless you because he knows that you are, in a way, disadvantaged. So don't give up. Find a liturgical setting that you can get more than the liturgy, and watch it online, and then offer your prayers from your heart as well, and God will bless you.
Do you think you should watch that in addition to attending a physical location, even if the liturgy isn't in English?
If there is one that's not in English, I would say that you should go there to receive Holy Communion if you are an Orthodox, and even if it's never in English and it's close by, you need to make sure that you go and you get catechized and be received so that you can receive the body and blood of Christ, because in the end, that's really the most important thing. The most important gift that you will ever get in your life is that. So yes, but I assume that there is no church at all, because, sometimes if there is no English-speaking church, it means that Orthodox church means that there aren't any indigenous people who have become Orthodox yet.
Yeah, it sounds like he's saying they're like in a foreign language or something. Maybe the liturgy's in a foreign language.
Yeah.
Question: how to know what saint to choose for after my baptism?
You're going to choose the saint before your baptism, and you'll be given the name during your baptism. What I do usually, I ask people to watch the videos of the lives of the saints and read the lives of saints and kind of find someone that you basically feel inspired by, so that you will be having him as your patron saint, and you have a day to celebrate that saint and celebrate your name day and have a connection with him. Talk to your priest if if you're able to get him to suggest some, but you need to know who you are named after once during your reception in the church, and you need to be in kind of a relationship with him as your patron saint, and then you get a blessing from that.
Yeah, I've heard some priests say that you should choose your saint name as someone that is like the same name as you. What do you think about that?
You can do that. I mean, if you're Luke and you come into the church, you can take Saint Luke as your patron saint. If you're Nicholas, and you can take Saint Nicholas. I usually encourage people to keep their name, but if your name is a completely I don't know, pagan name from wherever, then yeah, you need to find an Orthodox saint so that you can have a feast day that you celebrate your name day and be connected with that particular saint. I prefer that if you have an already well-known Orthodox saint's name, that you connect with that saint and keep that name.
Mhm. That's good advice. Question: inquirer. I heard that it is okay to pray directly to saints to accomplish tasks. I thought we prayed through saints to God. If we're praying
Yeah.
to created beings, how is that not idolatry? Good question.
It is idolatry if you think that they're the ones who do things, and that God has nothing to do with them, or whatever, with the process of whatever you're doing. I think you pray to saints, asking them to pray for you. That is the way to do it, okay? They are intercessors for us, okay? God may do something, a miracle through them. God may grant you what you asking for through them, but they don't have their own power. They have power only that comes to them through them from God himself, okay? They're not the sun, okay? They're like the moon that receives its light from the sun and reflects it onto the earth there, but they're not the sun. The sun of our lives, the sun of spiritual life, is God in only, and through Christ we receive anything that we are able to receive. So if you speak to a saint, ask him to intercede for you that your tasks may be accomplished or whatever, but they are not God. Okay, remember that. If you consider them as God, then you're making a mistake and you're being an idolater.
Mm. That's an important distinction for sure.
Yes,
Make sure that your heart's disposition is in the right place in
absolutely,
reference to the prayers that you're offering. Absolutely.
absolutely, absolutely.
This is a good question. Contemporary Compendium, regular of the show. My priest mixes the bread and wine together and uses a spoon to deliver from the chalice. When did this practice come about, and is it done across the whole church or only certain parishes?
This is done across the church, and it's been many centuries since it's been done. I believe that it was probably began in probably the 5th century or even earlier, the beginning of the 5th century. I'm not quite sure. I haven't seen any scholarly texts explaining this exactly, but I remember that it was done early in the church. One of the reasons that they did it that way was to make everybody equal, because some of the people who come and bring their own gold things to receive it in, or their gold or their silver things, and the poor people didn't have anything. So what they did is that um, they made everybody the same by giving everything through the spoon, and they mixed it at some point, and they give everything with the spoon so that everybody is on the same level. So that's really where it came from, and it's everywhere. all the Orthodox churches are doing it that way.
Yes, absolutely. And I believe you're correct about that date, the 5th century.
Yeah.
By the 7th century, I know at the Council of Trullo, what you were mentioning was actually condemned. That they couldn't do that anymore, bring their own receptacles
Oh,
to
yes.
receive the Eucharist, because
Yes.
there's canons that forbid it within that council
Yeah.
itself.
Yes, yes.
I know that because people were saying that canon refers to not using utensils to give the Eucharist. No, it's not bringing your own to receive it. That's the
which they
that is
did
the
to show
context.
their wealth. They
Yes.
did okay. So they brought the silver receptacle or a gold receptacle, and everybody else were using their own hands.
Mhm.
So they said to them, nope, everybody's equal in front of God. Therefore, no bringing your own utensils. We're going to give you through this utensil, which everybody receives from.
Yes. And another thing that it does is it protects the Eucharist from being desecrated, or you have, like in the Roman Catholic churches, sometimes people will steal them for for desecration. Like there was a activist group or something very recently that had done that, and they were like they
What
were
did they
going
do exactly?
they took the host from a Roman Catholic church. So when they went up, received it from the priest, they receive it in the hand, pocketed it, left, and they had this anti-Christian protest gathering or whatever, and they were planning on stomping on the Eucharist. They were going to desecrate it. Somebody came in and ran up to the guy, grabbed the Eucharist, and consumed it.
Okay.
Their wafer, but
yeah.
You get what I'm saying. I'm not saying they have a valid Eucharist. Let me be careful with
I'm
my
not
words.
saying either. I don't know what God does with any of that. So
Yeah,
I'm refraining from passing judgment on anyone.
Yeah. So anyway, to prevent that kind of thing from happening, the Eucharistic spoon is used. You can't pocket the mixed wine
because
and
in the beginning, during even the 4th century, we know from St. Basil that they will actually give them the Eucharist to take home so that they can receive the days that they were not in church. But the church stopped doing things like that, and then eventually they did it with a spoon.
Right. Absolutely. Very interesting history surrounding that.
Yeah.
Father Bless, I woke up from sleep with leg pain recently, and St. Catherine was on my mind. I guess I had a dream of her and can't remember it. Should I not think about it too much? I know very little about her.
Well, maybe you saw her in your sleep so that you can find out more about her. We have a video on St. Catherine, so please go watch the video.
There you go. That's a good answer. Learn
and
more
you
about
respond to the dream. But again, don't take dreams too seriously all the time, because dreams may come from different sources. But if you see a saint and you're reminded about them, then go learn a little more about them. That's what St. Paisius did when he was visited by Saint Euphemia. He didn't know anything about her, and she gave him the story of her life and the martyrdom and everything else. So I think that we need to know more about the saints, and that's why Trisagion Films is there. And we have done St. Catherine, we haven't done St. Euphemia yet. So.
And if an angel appears to you and asks you to come with him like Elijah, you might want to make the sign of the cross first.
Well, actually, Saint Simeon saw Christ himself.
Oh, yes.
He thought it was Christ. But if you look in the picture that we created there, he's surrounded by not the white light that we have in the icons, but the red light, which means that it wasn't Christ. And at some point, Saint Simeon realized that maybe this wasn't Christ, and he did his cross, and the devil kind of disappeared. Because we can be set astray by things like that.
Absolutely.
We can be deceived. It can be deceived.
I think that's one reason that it's so important that anyone that desires to, this is amongst other reasons, this is a secondary thing, but to ensure that you're not in some sort of spiritual delusion, you have to be within the Orthodox Church. You have to have, some kind of spiritual counsel to keep you in check, and to interpret and determine whether or not, hey, this is this, because outside of the Orthodox Church, it's guesswork. Can God operate outside of the church extra normatively? Sure, but
Absolutely, yeah.
how do you know whether or not it's actually God if you're outside of the church? It's almost impossible. This is why people ask me or ask the priests that come onto the show, well, what about Protestant revivals? What about this? What about that? What about the the visions that people see, or so on and so forth? Well, if you're outside of the church, it's impossible to say 100% where it came from. You need
Yeah.
to have the guardrails there.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with you. I think God acts everywhere. It's his world, it's his creation. He loves all people equally. All right. At the same time, the danger of being led astray by the devil and
Yes.
deceived and be deceived is very high. And we know that from the lives of the saints and the way that they explain and they discern. There is a level of discernment that you need to have, and not everybody has it. And that's why a spiritual father would be in place to have in your life, so that you could go to them and say, this is what's happening to me. What do you think? How can I? And, usually the priest will test these things and have you come back again and kind of advise you, and, and you can clarify what it may be. In this case, if you saw St. Catherine, I say wonderful. I mean, learn more about her. Maybe that would be a good thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
You may be inspired by her.
Alicia says, Father Panayiotis, Liam is watching and says, Papa P, what's up?
Hi, Liam. I'm doing well. How are you? Are you at home?
Cyrus asks, many blessings, Father. Is there a saint you would recommend to converts to get to know? It's plain to see that North American converts are well-meaning, but perhaps overzealous.
Well, that's two questions, right? Okay, the first one, I will not recommend any saint to you. I would say go watch the videos and learn about their lives, read the books and learn about their lives, be inspired by them, begin to pray, and God will reveal to you which saint you will be inspired by more, whatever, to take their name. All the saints are recommended to read their lives or watch the videos about them. So that's the first answer. The second one, it's plain to see that North American converts are well-meaning, but perhaps overzealous. Not all of them, and depends where they are and how much catechism they receive and guidance they receive. But there is a zealous feeling in the early years of your conversion, which is normal. And I would say keep some of that, don't lose it. Okay, you need that zeal, not all of it, not the big one, not the kind of you want to convert everybody because you discovered something so wonderful, which is true, but you are going to offend people if you are in their face continually, and if you try to, why can't they see it? They need to see this, and then you know better, and then you become judgmental, and then so please don't do things like that. Right. But that love for Christ that you have in these early years when you become Orthodox, keep that, okay? Because that will guide you, and it will help you to recover from major events in your life in the future, and will bring you back to Christ again and again, so that you will have the help that you need in your life. And that's my answer for that.
Absolutely. I was given some very good advice when I was first inquiring. There was a priest from Thessaloniki that sent me an email, and he said, Ben, you will experience an overflow of grace. You're going to experience, this kind of zealotry. You're going to, or zealous, not zealotry, zealous feeling. You're going to, have an abundance of grace. And then for a time, it will be withdrawn from you. And this will help to foster humility. That was some of the best guidance I was given at the very beginning. There was somebody else in the chat that had asked a question. Let me see, that was similar, because they said, question, inquire, I've been spending so much time looking into the Orthodox Church. I'm and going to divine liturgy, but I'm feeling more spiritually distant from God. Why? that could be potentially, I mean, I don't know your life. I don't know what's going on if you're, committing a bunch of
Yeah.
willful sins or not. But for me, at least, that was extremely helpful guidance. But do you want to address this one too, since we have it up?
Yeah, the first one is very, very right, that God withdraws sometimes his grace so that he can get us to understand that whatever we got before was directly from him. And then he wants us to surrender completely to him and trust in him. And that's why he removes the grace so that we can turn to him again. So that is very normal again. We need to again have guidance and go back to our spiritual father and explain what's happening to us, and he will help us to recover from that. The other thing is I wanted to say about this period is that some people may even be able to see miracles. They may be able to see amazing things, experience amazing things, and then everything ends at some point. Okay, so what God does is depending on who you are and what he wants from you and how he wants to heal you from whatever you experienced in your life. He will give you whatever is necessary to strengthen you and make you solid in the faith. And then, as we said before, as Ben explained, then he withdraws a little bit so that he can get you to realize that you need him more.
Yes.
And not relax and not be laxed about your prayer and not be laxed about your relationship with him. So this new thing, I've been spending so much time looking into the Orthodox Church, called Divine Liturgy, but I'm feeling more spiritually distant from God. Why? Again, I don't know. Sheep know their shepherd's voice, I guess you wanted to say. Yes, sheep know the shepherd's voice. We know who he is. He knows who we are, and he never abandons us. Now, again, I'm not quite sure what's happening in your life so that you are unable to feel the presence of God. I don't know. I don't want to guess, and I don't want to have conjecture here. Go to your priest and talk to him about it and see what he says. Do a confession in the sense of opening your heart and explaining what's happening to you. And there it may not be a spiritual problem. It may be some sort of whatever situation in your life. And he will advise you accordingly. And I don't want to interfere in that, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Reach out to your priest, and
Yeah.
they should if you've been attending for a while, they should know your story a little bit, so they might be
Yeah.
better handled.
I mean, I ask my inquirers and the people who come to me and their catechumens, I ask them to meet with me many times, and I learn what's happening to their lives, in their lives at the time, and I learn what happened in their lives before. And so even before they do confession, I kind of learn what's happening so I can give them guidance. And I teach them how to pray. I teach them how to, conduct themselves, and that helps a lot. So you need to go to your priest and speak with him and open your heart and talk to him about this. Yeah, I chose St. Porphyrios, my patron saint, from watching The Eye of the Soul. Oh, wonderful. Then reading Wounded by Love, thanks to Trisagion films. Glory be to God. That's what I say. Glory be to God. I was very blessed to meet St. Porphyrios, and that is one of the people that I love. And I experienced the power of God that came through him to me and my wife when we visited him. So I think St. Porphyrios is very special in my life as well. So glory to God for allowing us and giving us the privilege to know people like that. Okay, I mean that is an amazing thing. Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit. What was your experience like meeting a saint?
Well, St. Paisios, I met him before, a couple of years before that, and I knew about him and kind of I heard many stories, and then I was among others, and I was at the end of my MDiv period when I was doing my theological studies at Holy Cross in Brookline, Massachusetts. Anyway, so I went knowing about him, And I didn't really expect much so that I won't be disappointed. But what I saw in that man was a lot of wisdom, even though he was not very educated. He graduated from high school, I believe. I saw so much wisdom, so much joy, absolute joy. He was running around bringing us water and bringing us lugumia, the sweets, the delights. Um, and then when they asked him some questions and we sat around, he had so much wisdom that I didn't expect from a simple man like that. And now I've been watching the series in Greek of his life, and I am amazed at some of the things. Of course, I assume that there was a background that was really filled with the faith in God, in the family, in the environment where he grew up, and whatever. And I now realize even more how that man became a saint. With Porphyrios, I got no idea who he was. And I happened to be in Athens with my wife. I was a young priest, 3 months maybe as a priest. And one of the people that was hosting us, the lady that was hosting us in Athens, she offered the last day before we left if we wanted to go to see Father Porphyrios. And I said, who is Father Porphyrios? And she says, he's a good elder. You're going to like him, So, so we ended up there. He was 91 years old. He was basically blind. He got heart problems. He had, cancer behind his eye that was making him blind. He was very sick, and they told us that morning, they told us we can't see him. We drove an hour from Athens to go find him, right? So they told us we can't see him because he was rushed to the hospital this morning at 5 o'clock, and then they just brought him back, and he's really in bed. And so we were disappointed. So the lady asked if they would tell him directly who we were as a young priest and his wife from America, and they're not going to be able to come back again. So let him decide. And you know what? He accepted us, and we went upstairs where he was in this little room, and he was lying down, and then he kind of lifted himself up, and I bent down and kissed his hand, and then I asked him a serious question about something that we were struggling with my wife, and he says, "Where is your wife?" I said, "She's right here." So she went. I moved away, and she came in and bent down and kissed his hand. And as she was rising up, he slapped her in the face. So my wife is the only presbyter I know who has been slapped by a saint. So anyway,
Wow.
So that was the beginning of. Immediately he said, I'm sorry. And my wife pulled back and she started crying. So she was like 26 years old at the time and never traveled abroad, away from America. And here is this scruffy old man with a hand like a rock, hit her in the face, So he's really crying, okay? So after he apologized and said, I didn't mean to hurt you, I love you. Okay, he's also Presbytera that I heard from a saint, I love you, so that's important.
Yeah.
And then he went on to answer the question that I asked him. And he began to describe what affected her over the years. And he focused on her father, who had gone to Vietnam and came back the second time. He went twice to Vietnam, 2 tours, and the second time he came back, he had seen so much mayhem, so many of his friends who died, that he was completely changed by that. And all of that was affecting the family. Mm-hmm. So he didn't know about Vietnam, but he knew how those things affected my wife.
Yes.
As a young child at the time, and growing up in that environment of his own condition, And then he went on and he says, and your mother is like this. he described the father, then to the detail of as if he was his psychotherapist, really, about his
Right.
behavior, about his. And then he said, your mother is like this, and described exactly the mother. And then he says, and your older sister, how did he know that she got an older sister? And described the sister to the T. And then he says, your younger sister, he even said that. And how did he know? He just met us and described the younger sister to the T, as if he knew them for years and knew their psychology and knew what had happened to them. And the more he spoke, the more she cried. Later, when we left on the way back to Athens, she told me that, in fact, I was doing the translation because she didn't know any Greek, right? And he spoke in Greek. She told me that even though I was translating, before I even translated everything that he said, she felt that he understood everything he said in English. Okay, we're talking about Pentecost.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
Pentecost, and then everything he said was so true, and he knew that she got an older sister and a younger sister, and knew their psychology and all of those things. That really amazed me, and really shaped my future work with people and the understanding of the presence of God again, which really was something that I had I was a young priest, and I was saying, what am I doing? What can I do? And, maybe I won't be able to do anything. And then I realized that it's God who does things, not me.
Yes.
So I always asked God to help people when they came to me after that. I never gave up that request of God to be present with every person that comes to me, and to be there so that I won't make mistakes and I won't say anything that's wrong. And at the same time, to heal them and help them and heal them and do whatever he wants to do with each person. So that really was an amazing experience for me, which stayed with me forever, and with my wife, of course. Funny thing is that at the end, right before we were ready to leave, he turns to me, he says, is she Greek? And I said, no, she's really very American. Her family goes back very, early. Anyway, so, and he thought about it. He looked at her, he thought about it, and he says, yeah, there's a little Greek in her. Fast forward 30 years, her mother bought her a DNA test from Ancestry.com for Christmas. We sent it back. This was right after he was declared a saint, I believe. And she gets the results. He's 4% Greek.
There you go.
And we're talking about a family of Anglo-Saxons primarily.
Yes, yes.
Who lived most of their lives in Southern Carolina from her mother's side. And the father's side, there was a New York connection. So maybe it's from New York that the Greek came in.
So that raises a very important question then, Father. How many parishioners have you slapped? No. I'm just kidding.
I slap them by give them a hug.
There you go.
I give them a hug.
What was the purpose? What was the purpose of the slap? Was it just to get her attention?
To get her attention, yeah. To get her attention, yeah. And she listened very carefully.
Yes. I would too if that was my interaction. Absolutely.
But she got the slap and she got the I love you. I didn't mean I'm sorry. I love you.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, these are the things that shape our lives. And if we don't expose ourselves to holy people, we don't get it. We don't really get it. We make assumptions that are not true. And I think that's where I feel very blessed about that.
Yes. It's very interesting, the things that you witness walking through the Orthodox life, and the things that you hear from people that, like I had friends who visited Mount Athos not that long ago, and the stories that they told me were just amazing. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
but they had went with, I believe they went with Father Hans. I don't know if he went with them. I think they did, but they were telling me some stories about some of the things that he had experienced, and
Yeah.
it's just absolutely amazing. And some of those involve St. Paisios as well. So
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if you know those stories, but
Well, I know a lot of them. I mean, there is no time to tell them all. So,
yes, yes,
and I heard some of the stories from monks Marathos that were, they're with him. And then we have Saint Athanasius, Father Athanasius, Bishop Athanasius of Limassol, who spent a lot of time with him, and I know him very well. And he tells stories like that. And whenever we get together, he tells me stories about his encounter with Sabasius, which was he was there. He would stay with him for several days. He would go visit him frequently, even from the time that he was a deacon, and that is what shaped him. It's really amazing. I mean, if you meet people like that, you never forget it, and it does something to you. It shapes you in a positive way, and brings you closer to God. So, glory to God for those things. Glory to God.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
you can kind of tell when you meet a very grace-filled priest. You leave feeling changed in a way.
Yes, yes, and I think joy. You get joy.
Yeah,
That's the spirit of joy that comes to you when you meet someone who loves God and wants to be, wants to be closer to God.
absolutely.
Yeah,
It's a
you get a
beautiful
lot
thing.
of joy. Yeah.
Question: did the apostles Peter, James, Thomas, Mark create liturgies as we see today, or were the liturgies we see today innovated in the 5th century?
No, we have the early liturgies of not Peter and James, of Mark. Is a tradition that goes back in the Alexandrian Church from the early centuries. We have the liturgy, of course, of James. We have the liturgy of St. James Iagophos, which is again going very far back, and we know that they exist. That we have ancient documents. There's no question about them. And of course, the liturgies that we call the Basil and Chrysostom, which were shortened versions of these older ones.
Mhm.
And there, the liturgies, they were not written by St. Chrysostom and St. Basil. There were maybe a few of the prayers, maybe a couple of the prayers were written by them, but no more than that. They are the liturgies that they used when they were bishops, and that's why they received their names. They might receive an extra prayer, but that's the reason they received their names. But we have the ancient liturgies, which are really true. Thomas, I don't think, and Peter, I don't think, but Mark and James definitely, and along with the two liturgies we use today, Basil and Chrysostom.
Very interesting. Yep,
Mhm.
and preserving the liturgy is of the utmost importance. The guy that asked that question earlier is in the chat, so I would recommend rewinding and watching that answer to your question about the Gregorian chant. Dr. Smiles asks, God bless you, Father. If you already share the name of the saint, do you still take the name of a saint when joining the church, or do you keep your name? We kind of answered this a little earlier, but maybe a
Yeah,
brief.
my answer is if you have a name of a saint, don't take another saint, if possible. But I will, when people ask me, I don't stop them. I just agree to it because they developed a special uh, connection with a new saint they learned about, and they never had a connection with the previous saint. So, I don't want to stop them. But my advice would be if you're not really if you are not attached to a new saint that you kind of inspired by, keep the old name and celebrate that saint and learn more about him, and that would be good enough.
Lord bless you and your family, Ben. Christ is King. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for watching the show. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, so now I'm gonna start to prioritize the inquirer questions. So I'm going to go through. If you're an inquirer, let me know in the comments, and I'm going to make sure that I pull those questions up first, and we'll start getting to those because we're about 20 minutes until we end here. So, believe this is an inquiry question. Are there scenarios in which one inquiring could be denied becoming a catechumen?
Well, I never denied anybody in my experience, in my almost 40 years of being a priest. But if I saw that the person wasn't behaving properly, if they saw that they were, and there are some people who are mixing politics with the faith, who are more politically oriented than faith oriented, and they come and they want to bring their political whatever ideologies into the church, I would probably deny them. I haven't done it yet because I haven't had anybody like that. The people who come to me are very, apparently, they're very more into the faith, and they are fascinated by the faith, and they are very serious. And over the period of a year, when I kind of have them with me, I figure out who is and who is not. But I never had anybody who stayed and wanted to be baptized who was, I would say, I thought that he would not be a good Orthodox Christian. So I think the ones that are not serious, they don't stay. The ones who I would probably deny them, they don't stay, because if you come from a Protestant world, Orthodox life is very difficult.
Yes.
Okay, it requires a lot of commitment. It requires a lot of prayer. It requires all kinds of things that they never, fasting, things that they are nobody is able to do unless they're serious about this. Okay, and that is really the 9 months or a year is really very necessary, so that you can kind of make sure that people who stay are really serious about this, and they are not going to walk away a few months later or create a problem. Yeah.
Father Bless, what do you think about The Chosen, the TV
I
series?
actually liked it. I think there may be some things in there that are not so accurate, good, or whatever you want to call them. But I haven't seen all of it. I only saw the first season, and I really liked it a lot. I think that they used their imagination. They did a lot of good editing so that they can preserve as real people and not mess up with the message of the gospel. And I haven't completely watched everything. I have to admit that. I only watched the first season, but what I saw, I liked. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't think it was too bad. I thought the first season especially was pretty good.
Yeah, well, that's all I saw. So
Yeah, yes. Yeah, they do have a little bit of some embellishments later on where they will kind of make up parts of the story or something, but it's a film, so
yeah. Again, you don't learn theology from that, and
right.
You need to go to the scriptures and learn from the scriptures and read them over and over again. But as a little bit of entertainment that is safe and not harmful to your soul, let's say, I would say it's not bad, especially the first season.
Yeah. And one thing to remember, Jonathan Rumi is not Jesus.
Yeah.
The actor.
And he admits that. So
yes, that's a good thing to admit. I would say
he seems like a good guy. Actually, I saw him in some interviews, and
yeah,
he's very serious. Yeah,
we were just talking about him in yesterday's show where he had gotten frustrated. He wanted to go and kneel to receive the Eucharist, and the priest would not give him the Eucharist. He's a Roman Catholic, but he went to communion and he was kneeling. That's preferred way for them, but I guess in the Novus Ordo they don't like it too much, so the priest wouldn't give him the Eucharist. So he's like, well, I guess I'll stay down here until somebody gives me. That's his response. So we were talking about that yesterday a little bit, but kind of interesting. All right, let's see. Question, catechumen, how to prepare for a life confession?
Well, there are several things floating around which are for you to use as self-examination. I usually share something that is in that red book by the Russian church in the United States. At the end, it has a self-examination about the 10 Commandments. It's pretty good. There are other ones that circulate in English. Find one of those and go over your life, looking at each one of those things listed there. And whatever comes up, take a note and bring your notes with you to the confession, and kind of use the notes to kind of cover everything so that you don't leave things behind. And if you forget anything, I mean, the prayer of forgiveness includes anything that you might have forgotten. And then if you remember it later, bring it back to the priest at some other time. And God is merciful and he loves us even more as a human expression. He always loves us.
Yes.
When we admit our weaknesses and we ask for his mercy, and that is very good.
I feel like I won't remember everything I've ever done wrong.
Of course not. Of course not.
But yeah, that would be way too much.
Yeah.
All right, let's see.
Yeah.
Newman asks an interesting question. He says, what is the best way of picking a sponsor? Is it just anyone who's willing, somebody I relate to? Am I overthinking it? I don't want to just be zealous and jump forward to fit in.
Yeah, don't be zealous and jump forward to fit in. Wait, take your time, make connections with people in the parish, and seek out to see who is someone that you kind of have respect for and someone that you think that may be a good mentor to you, because that's really one of the reasons that you choose a sponsor. And if you're unable to do it, ask the priest to help you with that. I usually help people, and I have some good parishioners who I kind of select, and I direct the catechumens to meet them. And so, the priest can do a lot of that work with you. And in the end, he needs to approve the person, I think, that would be your sponsor, because he knows the people better than you know them. You will ever know them in such a short time. So yes, pick a sponsor that is, first of all, that he is willing, right? But and then somebody that you do relate to. Yeah. And you're not overthinking, you're thinking very well. But talk to your priest and get him to approve and get him to give you suggestions of people to approach and people to get to know. And you do well. Don't worry.
Yeah, don't compliment Newman too much. You'll give him a big head. No.
Newman.
He's a regular of the show. Good to see you, Newman. There you go. Question, Father. What advice do you have for recent converts who are preparing to have children and raise them in the Orthodox faith? That's a good question.
Well, again, you will never know everything, and you'll be learning all your life. Remember that always. And there are so many different things that the church has developed over the years, of the centuries, so that they can take care of us. One of them is, let's say, when you have a child, when you give birth, rather, you come back to the church and you get the blessing. There is actually 3 blessings. Even if you get 2 of them, would be better. There is the 8th day blessing. There is a 40-day blessing. All of those things are very important that we kind of try and include in our lives. It's all blessings from the church and from the priest. And then I would say live close to the church, as close as possible, so that you can be able to go and bring your children so that they can experience the church fully, so that they can make friends within the church. They can be part of the activities. And in my parish, we have many activities for young people, for young families, so that they can make friends. The children can make friends, but the parents can also make friends with other parents. And then if your parish has a school, it's even better to include them in the school, whether it's Sunday school, whether it's, I don't know, Greek school, whether it's a regular school. And there are parishes that now have full schools, or they have maybe hybrid homeschooling kind of availability, hybrids where there's part of the education is at the church and part of the education is at home. So make sure that your life is centered around the church and around the services, around the celebrations, and teach your children, teach them the faith at home, because they will never learn anything more than you teach them, even from Sunday school. They will never know all those things unless you are involved in it. So learn for your own sake and then transmit to your children the traditions of the church and the techniques to survive in the world, in the difficult world, and you will do well. And always surrender your children to God. Don't worry about them. They're a gift to you from God. Turn them over and hand them to God so that they will have the blessing of God and the guidance of God in everything that they do. And you'll be happy that way, happier.
I think the first thing you said is so important about trying to live near the church.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people, especially the newcomers to Orthodoxy, they'll ask questions like, "What do I do? I'm an hour away from my church. Well, what do I do if I'm this?" Well, maybe aspire to move closer at some point, if at all possible. I know eventually that's probably what I'll be doing, moving a little bit closer to my church, because I drive an hour every day or
Oh, my God.
every Sunday, and then I go. We do like men's fellowship on Monday, and I drive. But it's not so bad. It's a straight shot down the highway. It's one road basically, and then I make a turn. But it is an hour away, so that's a little far, but it's worth it because the church has a beautiful community, and
that's the whole point. You embrace a community and you allow the community to embrace you when you live closer and you're there more frequently, and that becomes your family, your extended family. I remember growing up, of course, in a village in Cyprus, a small town, where everybody was an uncle and an aunt, and every old lady was a yaya, a grandmother, and it was really an amazing experience as a young person growing up in an environment where you're known by everybody, they know your name, everybody's watching over everybody else, and that is what a good community looks like, and that's what a good community will offer you, and you will offer back to the children of the other families as you live in that environment. So, it's today one of the things that is dangerous for us is to be without a community and to be broken up and dispersed, and our children don't have that experience of that immediate family, and they already don't have the experience of growing up with grandparents or your brothers and sisters or whatever you have, because we're so dispersed around the country and we keep moving and moving. So at least find a church that is stable and that you can be part of it, and move closer to it. Even if you're half an hour away, it's better than an hour, because you can do a run and bring the children and then go shopping and come back and pick them up, for the activities, not for church. Church, you need to be there with them.
Yes, absolutely. Father, do you think Higher Martyr John of Santa Cruz, who was killed by Satanists, will be canonized?
I don't know him either, but that's a big question.
That's an interesting story. I'd like to look into that and see what happened there. If you know where I could do some research on that, let me know. In the comments.
Yeah, because I never heard of John of Santa Cruz, But even if, let me say this, and people think that the only saints that exist are those only that they were canonized. Let me tell you that that's not the case. I think God receives a lot of people as saints that we don't know about, because He knows better. And if God and if God wants to make somebody a saint, He will. He will do it in His own way, and then we'll just follow Him.
All right, and I have a good last question here.
All right.
Question: are Roman Catholic exorcisms legitimate? Do Orthodox priests do exorcism? So I guess there's two questions there. I keep seeing videos of Roman priests talking about their experience, and I've been wondering about this.
All right. First of all, the question, are Roman Catholic priests, Roman Catholic exorcisms legitimate, is a legalistic question that I will never ask anyone. I don't know if anything is legitimate or not. That's not my job. I have no way of judging. It's like, is the priesthood of the Roman Catholics valid? I have no idea. Okay. Is the communion of the Roman Catholics valid? I have no idea. I know that they're not really Orthodox, and I know that they have a limited, grace. They don't have the fullness of grace. But I don't know that God has actually cut them off completely, and therefore they don't receive anything. So if God decides that he will use a good priest within the Roman Catholics to cast demons, why not? All right. Now, I would invite him to my house to do exorcisms because he's not a legitimate Orthodox priest. So if you change that question, you make it, are Roman Catholic exorcisms legitimate as Orthodox exorcisms? Then I will accept that question and say, no, they're not legitimate as Orthodox exorcisms. Do Orthodox priests do exorcisms? Yes, they do. I've done them many times. And I've seen the results many times. And when we do exorcisms, we're not talking about people like in The Exorcist, where their heads are turning around and things like that. That's nonsense, okay? There are people who are being bothered by spirits, and I've seen it many times. And then I read a prayer over them, the prayers of exorcism. I ask them to go home and do the Jesus prayer, and all of that goes away. So it's a lot easier than what you see in that movie, The Exorcist, and it's all that is not a legitimate movie in the sense of demonic possession. There is such things, but I never experienced them, and I hope I never will. And I don't think there is among our people, because they are baptized, they're confirmed with the Holy Spirit, they're given communion. I mean, the devil cannot live in a vessel of grace. Now, if somebody goes and worships demons, then maybe they become demonic, and that can be obvious, or it may not be as obvious, and that's why when we receive people through baptism, we do the exorcisms as well. And even if I do a chrismation, I always do the exorcism as well, because I don't know the people I receive, where they were involved and what they were involved in and what they bring in. So I always do the exorcisms of baptism so that I can clean the people from the whatever activity of the demons might be in them. So yes, we do exorcisms. We do them in baptism and in chrismation. Maybe not everybody, but I do them. And then I have seen the effect of demonic activity in the lives of people, which comes in different forms. And after the prayers, it goes away and they're cleansed from it. So, yep.
So yes, the Orthodox do exorcisms. Absolutely.
Yep.
What do you think about these?
Maybe we'll do a special what do you call it? A presentation of that. Again.
Yeah, there you go. You'll have the person on the bed and their head will spin 360. What do you think about? I'll ask this, and then there's somebody sent in a super chat. We'll get to that question last.
All right.
We'll wrap up here. What do you think about? There's Roman Catholic priests on YouTube that there's a famous one, Father Ripperger. I don't know if you ever heard of him. But he tells stories about some of his exorcisms. It's probably what this person's talking about. But some of the things that he says, in my opinion, are kind of concerning. I won't say anything negative, but concerning. He says things like, I spoke with the devil and he told me he's afraid of the rosary. Things like this. What are your thoughts on statements like that?
I know the devil exists. I know the devil bothers people. I know that sometimes the devil will speak to the exorcist. We've seen that among Orthodox priests who've done things like that. I didn't experience it myself, but I know that it has happened. There are cases where the devil reveals things even about the exorcist, which are uncomfortable. Now, if that happens to the Roman Catholic priest who does that in the name of Christ, and Christ allows that to happen, and he gives him so much, experience of that kind of thing, I'm not the one who's going to stop God from doing that, right? So I'm not going to judge the priest, the Catholic priest, in that way. I cannot do that. But I would say that things like that are possible. Yeah. Even the demons revealing things from the life of the priest that are not known and embarrassing him to get him to stop what he's doing.
All right, last question here. If Jesus and the apostles used the Septuagint, which includes the deuterocanonical books, why do Protestants reject it? Even the Lord's Prayer reflects the LXS. Doesn't this undermine sola scriptura? ?
Well, again, I'm going to ask you to go and watch the video I have under Ask Father Panayiotis, under the playlist Ask Father Panayiotis, where I answered the question about why the Protestants have dropped 10 of the books of the Bible. Okay. For here, I would say only that the Protestants, unfortunately, the Protestant reformers in the early years, they rejected, well, they didn't use the Septuagint, they used the Vulgate. And with rejecting the Roman Catholics and the Pope, they rejected also the extra books which had things about, like, for example, Maccabees has something about the Virgin Parthenos, which indicates that. Let me see. No, the Maccabees has something about the offering prayers for the dead.
Yes.
Okay. Which they didn't accept because the Roman Catholics were exploiting the prayers for the dead through the indulgences.
Yes.
Okay. So you could, what they claimed is that if you give us this much money, we will give you an indulgence that will cleanse these many of the sins of your ancestors, of your dead ancestors. So the more money you give, the more sins we will cleanse from them. And so the reaction of the Protestant reformers was that they will abolish that book, which the church used, the Roman Church used to defend the position of praying for the dead. What they did was that they went back to the Jewish leadership's decision in the year 95 to reject the Septuagint because the Christians were using it, and reject some of the books, including Maccabees, I believe, where there is a reference to the virgin birth, and the other books that they were written in Greek and not in Hebrew, and some of the books that were talking about the coming of Christ and the Messiah that were not according to what they understood. So they rejected certain books, and then the Protestants rejected them as well. And they took the Masoretic text from the Jews instead of using the Christian text that was used for the last 1,500 years. Now, that is very unfortunate, but that's where we are. And I think now they're waking up and they're saying, let's go back and look at the Septuagint as well. And they realize the Septuagint is a better translation of the Hebrew Bible, where there was, Hebrew text, than their own translations that they get today. And that's what the unfortunate thing is about that. They confuse people and they left out a lot of things. But you can talk more about that, perhaps Ben, because you've been there and you know a lot of that stuff.
Yes, it's all Jerome's fault. We'll place all the blame on Jerome. There you go.
Well,
That's all you
Jerome did a
need.
good job, you know. I mean, he created the Vulgate, so I mean,
Yes.
they needed the Bible in Latin, so yeah. He didn't drop the Deuterocanonical books; he used them.
Yeah, I'm just joking around.
Yeah.
Newman, thank you, Father Panayiotis. Cleve, I appreciated your cameo in Red Dead Redemption 2. There was a somebody on YouTube was playing Jay was playing a video game on YouTube, and there was a character that was he had a very bald, thinning head, and he said, "Oh, it's Cleve to Antiquity." So, I thought that was funny. We shared a clip of that not that long ago. As that kind of a funny moment, but
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Is there anything that you would like to plug to the audience before we wrap up here?
Well, I want to give you congratulations for your program. And how many people do you have logged in right now? Do you know? Can you see?
I think there's about 150 watching right now.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So I do congratulate you because you are reaching out with things that are very good. And then to the audience, I would say, cleave to Christ.
Yes.
So, yes, antiquity. I love antiquity. My studies in my PhD work was all in late antiquity, or the time of antiquity of the church. But I would say cleave to Christ would be my advice, because he's the one who is the truth. He is alive. He is the resurrection, and we need to be with him. Yeah, and all these other things, are good, but Christ is the center of all things.
Absolutely. Very beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Everybody
God
that's
bless
watching
you,
this,
and everybody watching, God bless you and keep you and protect you, and a blessed new year.
absolutely. And make sure to subscribe to Trisagion Films and support their
Yes.
ministry if you can. There should be, I believe, on the homepage there, I believe in the description, there's an option to support as well. And then, Father, if you'll send me in an email something to include in the description, you can support them from the description as well.
Yes, I will. Thank you. Thank you very much. God bless you, and have a good evening. Yeah.
Absolutely. Have a good night.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.